I'm going to start by declaring the truth that Jesus is healer. I'm going to follow that up by saying that I prayed for healing and not experienced it myself. But one thing I hold close and trust with all my heart is that Jesus is healer. And for me, there's no doubt about it because Scripture shows it. You may be asking or thinking, how can you believe in something that you have not experienced personally? It is crazy, I know, but it's also known as faith. Hebrews 11:1 says, now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. I have an internal hole in my right eye, and it means that I have no detailed vision. So to put it simply, a large permanent black spot obscures the vision in the center of my right eye. And it was a result of a football accident that occurred in May 23, when a football hit me flush on the eye. My initial thought at the time was, it must be really swollen as I couldn't see through it at the time. But after numerous trips to the doctors, they said as a result of the impact of the ball, it has caused a stage 3 macular hole. And this is the part of your eye that allows you to see the detail, which is separate from your peripheral vision. Now, I've prayed many times for my eye to be healed. I've had people whose ministry is healing to pray for it, and there has been no change. Why? I do not know. Sight to me is now as precious as it has ever been. But in the midst of it all, and the ups and downs, the unshakable truth that I hold on to is that Jesus is healer. When we read through Scripture, there is no set formula as to how or at times why Jesus healed. He healed many. He healed adults and children, crowds and individuals. He healed the blind. He healed those that were deaf. He healed those with leprosy and those who were demon-possessed. He healed those that could not walk, and he raised the dead with ease. We see that with the girl in Matthew 9:18 and Lazarus in John 11:1-44. Jesus also healed out of compassion. He healed out of faith, and he healed those that doubted. He healed Jews and he healed Gentiles. He healed the rich and he healed the poor. Race, gender, level of faith was not a barrier. Jehovah Rapha is one of the many names of God. And Jehovah derives from the Hebrew word chava, to be or to exist. When Jehovah is translated, it means the existing one. In Hebrew, Rapha means to restore, to heal, or to make healthful. Jeremiah 30:17 says, "But I will restore to you health and heal your wounds, declares the Lord." The very nature of God is one of transformation. And this takes the phrase, Jesus is healer beyond the miracles, and to a place deeper that takes us past the physical. Sickness does not only affect the physical dimension, it affects the whole person, mind, body, emotions, community, and spirituality. When my son was whisked off in an ambulance, literally seconds after he was born, I remember standing in a corridor in ER, looking at this little boy in an incubator with 8 people attending to him, wondering what was going on. He was to stay in hospital for a while longer as they monitored him. Gwen and I were in a bit of a wilderness, having prepped for so many months to take our little boy home. But during that period, we travelled back and forth to the hospital for about a week without ever taking our son home. That period really shook us. It really challenged us. But it also shaped the view that we hold now that life is precious. We also held onto a belief that our God can heal. Was my faith shaken at the time? Yes. Did my mind go back to 2 years before when my dad died of cancer despite the numerous prayers? Yes. The literal translation of my son's Yoruba name, Oluwatobiloba, means our God is awesome. And God proved himself to be just that. We now have a healthy, energetic 6-year-old boy who is bright, passionate, and loves Pokemon. Julian Richards, who leads Cornerstone Church in Swansea, says, when a body is healed, it is a statement from heaven to the enemy and everyone that the kingdom is here and is coming. We can place more emphasis on that passage in Matthew 6:10, where it says, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And as we read through scripture, we see that through the restoration of the physical being, Jesus is also changing and challenging the norms of society. At the time, again, speaking, or rather fully speaking, of God's kingdom. You see, Jesus is disruptive in a good way. Therefore, I see healing is also disruptive. Jesus is constantly challenging cultural norms through it. He questions what society thinks is right at the time. And through Jesus' healings, he is transforming areas that affect us all, and 3 areas in particular: the physical being, our communities, and our spiritual beings, our hearts. Now, these 3 areas are intertwined in Jesus' stories of healing. They don't stand alone on their own. It's either one follows the other or one precedes the other. In John 4:46-54, we read of Jesus healing the official son. This took place in Galilee, where Jesus grew up. Now, Galilee was also a place where there was a lack of faith. In John 4:44, Jesus said that a prophet has no honor in his own country. So my question is, why would Jesus head back there? But despite the lack of faith, Jesus faces head-on the lack of belief found in the place where he grew up. In verse 46-50, it says, once more he visited Cana in Galilee, where he had turned the water into wine. And there was also a captain royal official whose son lay sick at Capernaum. When this man heard that Jesus arrived in Galilee from Judea, he went to him and begged him to come and heal his son, who was close to death. Verse 48, Jesus says, unless you people see signs and wonders, Jesus told him, you will never believe. The royal official said, sir, come down before my child dies. Go, Jesus replied, your son will live. You see, the official came to meet with Jesus from Capernaum, which was roughly 26 kilometers away from Cana, where he met Jesus. The official had made it his mission to meet Jesus and seek healing for his dying son. Now, this official is used to giving out orders, but when he met Jesus, he begged him to come and heal his son. Such was his desperation. And in that moment, just as God spoke creation into life in Genesis, more than 20 kilometers away from the boy, Jesus spoke life into the official son. It was done and he was healed. Distance was no barrier. The story of the woman who was bleeding for 12 years in Mark 5:21 took place when Jesus was actually on his way to heal a dead girl. You see, the healing of this woman was not just about the physical, but also about restoration to her community. This woman had bled for 12 years, and her issues were known within her local area. She had visited numerous doctors, spent all she had trying to find a cure, but her quality of life did not improve. In fact, she got worse. And given the laws at the time, this woman was considered unclean. You could read more about that in Leviticus 15:25-27. And she would have been excluded from social contact with others as a result of these laws. Any object that she touched would be considered unclean, and any person touched would have then been deemed to be unclean. Imagine that today, being ostracized from society, pushed out because of a medical condition. In the current climate that we live in, it would completely be frowned upon. And it begs the question, what about being treated differently because of how you look, your race, your political stance, or your economic status? Jesus' healings challenged those views. This woman would have been living with this issue within her community. And the fact she was branded unclean, imagine how lonely she must have felt. Imagine that for 12 years. And she got to this point of desperation. She had tried everything, but had now come to know of a man that was healing people left, right, and center. She made her way towards him amongst the crowd, possibly disguised, hiding herself, the shame she felt, and also her illness. She knew deep in her heart that if only she could touch the end of his clothes, a little brushing of the fabric of the healing man, she believed that she would be made well. Jesus personified healing, as when the woman touched Jesus, he felt healing power leave him. It wasn't just part of him like an add-on, it is him. The woman immediately recognizes that she was healed. She trembles before Jesus, possibly thinking, oh no, here we go again. I am about to be condemned and ridiculed. Fear gripped her. Instead, the opposite happens, and we read in verse 34, Jesus says, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. In that moment, her journey back into community begins. Her faith led to healing and integration into her society and community. Her community would have been impacted by her healing. Now, if Jesus can heal anyone, I believe that is the same for the reverse, that Jesus can use anyone to heal. Just look at his disciples. A crew of fishermen and tax collectors, a treasurer turned thief, embezzler, and then a traitor. On the subject of healing, Rich Nathan writes, Jesus is not limited by the size of the problem or the worthiness of the recipient. And you can add to that, nor the person praying for healing. Jesus commanded his disciples in Mark 16:15-18. He said to them, go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. He then goes on to say, they will place their hands on sick people and they will get well. Simple to read. However, not simple, or rather not as simple to act out at times. It is often easy for us to allow our minds and our brains to take over when it comes to healing. We begin to start thinking about the how, the why, what ifs, and so forth. These are good questions to ask, but it can also breed unbelief. However, there must be a balance between the two. Matthew 17:14 is a story of Jesus healing a boy possessed by a demon. Now, the father of this boy brought his son to the disciples, and they themselves were unable to heal him. When Jesus asked the disciples why they could not heal the boy, Jesus points to the lack of faith in verse 19-20. The disciples came to Jesus in private and said, or asked, why couldn't we drive it out? He replied, because you have so little faith. Truly, I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. Faith, faith, faith. However big or little, it is a key ingredient to seeing healing. That is what Jesus is asking from us. For us to heal, it is also a command from Jesus, as we read earlier, or as we read earlier in Mark 16:15-18. When we see healing, it builds and encourages faith, big or small. Healing speaks of a God who is interested in complete restoration and speaks of a God who is compassionate and has complete authority over the earth. I am by no means an expert on healing, but I believe in Jesus, who is the ultimate healer, and know that he will and can use anyone to heal. Jesus did some incredible things during his time on the face of this earth. He then says that there are greater things to come, and we are part of that. John 14:12 says it. Very truly, I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Father. Jesus is healer, and he invites us to be part of the adventure of healing. This is a huge and complex topic, and many of you may have lots of thoughts and questions, and I encourage you to explore this more in one-to-one discipleships and in small groups. But the bottom line of this talk is that Jesus is healer, and that will never change.